Okay, well, welcome everybody to our second global Power Platform admins user group here in July. We are really honored to have Manuela Pichler here today to talk about the CoE Starter Kit. So this is a really cool thing. Second in our list. Last month we had Ken Aguilar, and now we've got Manuela. So I think we're shaping up to start learning some really good stuff. I'm going to move kind of quickly so we can get right to Manuela, because I think we're going to have a lot of questions today. So again, what we are here is just the desire for a global community, and for us to share our knowledge and to further our knowledge through supporting each other. It looks like I might have just lost I think I did. Here, let me just pull that back up. I haven't had that happen before. There we go. We'll just jump right in and what's happening. So, the idea here is to keep sharing, to keep learning from each other. I think, back to kind of like that PNP idea, the sharing is caring idea. So that's who we are, and we want to be this safe gathering space for everybody to come, everybody for all experience levels to feel welcome, to feel part of the discussion. No question is too novice. Come in, ask your questions, be part of the group. Again, the idea is we want to define our own experience with this user group. We want to make it almost more of a conversation than just a talkback mechanism. So that's really where we're trying to go with this. Currently, we meet from 10 to 11 Mountain Daylight Time, so I apologize because that's where I'm located. So I should have actually put the UTC in here. I'm sorry, I think it's UTC 1700, I believe. And we do that the second Tuesday of each month, except for next month because it's going to be a holiday month. So we're going to skip that. And then every month we try to just talk about something that's new in the environment and what's happening. This month, one of the things is we're seeing a lot about the managed environments. So you might want to go check out the link here on the overview. It's in preview right now, and what it is just it's a suite of capabilities which will allow you to manage different environments, and then to have reporting on those, have like DLP access, things like that. I'll be interested to see what Manuela has to say about this, because there does seem to be some overlap there, but I think that's definitely worth looking at. And then if you don't already know about it, the Microsoft Power Platform Conference is going to be happening September 20th through 22nd in Orlando, Florida, United States. And if you want to register, they've given me this code here that you can use, and it'll give you $50 off of your of your registration fee. So feel free to take advantage of that. I'll also post it in the Teams area for us if you want that in the future. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce Manuela. I think everybody here, obviously, we can see the number of people who are interested in joining us today. Know Manuela and know Manuela's work and the contributions that have been given to the community, what we do every day, and how much easier our lives are because of what you've given us, Manuela. So as you can see, Principal Program Manager, PowerCat, I think some of our favorite YouTube channels, at least here at my house, when we see, and CoE Starter Kit, Power Platform Adoption Maturity, and then of course her dog Logan. I had to show my 10-year-old the other day who thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Manuela.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to mention my dog because if you hear barking in the background, you'll at least know where it's coming from. He doesn't like cars outside the window or people outside the window or mailmen or anything like that. So I'll take over the screen share and then get started. So yeah, in the session, I wanted to really focus on, I've installed the CoE Starter Kit. What do I do next? And over the years, and I'll go a little bit into the history, the CoE Starter Kit has grown and grown with the feedback that we've received. And on one side, obviously, that's a good thing. There's much more useful stuff in there. There's more ebbs and flows. But on the other hand, it can make getting started a little bit difficult because you install it and you see 60 flows, 25 apps, and you're like, where do I get started? What do I do? It can be a little bit overwhelming. So hopefully this session will be useful for those of you who are just getting started, and also provide some nuggets of information for those of you who are already on the journey, or have been on the journey for a little bit longer. So I wanted to, before kind of diving into the CoE Starter Kit, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of setting the context. What is the kit? And also have a 2-minute history lesson of why does it exist, and then go into demos of what should I do first and next after I install it. I'll try and keep an eye on time. I've prepared quite a lot of different demos, but I do want to leave enough time for Q&A at the end. So some of the things I talk about, I'll only show a slide of, but if you do want to see a demo, let me know and we can cover that in the Q&A section afterwards. So really the CoE Starter Kit, so my team is the PowerApps Custom Advisory Team. So we work closely with managed customers that are adopting Power Platform at enterprise scale. So we're talking about very large customers that want to roll out Power Platform to their entire organization and enable a large amount of people to become citizen developers. So like many things that we in our team do, everything started with a customer engagement that my colleague Maddie had, I think in 2018. And it was the need to see tenant level, what's going on, who are my app creators, where are those apps being created, is my adoption growing? So back then, no admin connectors or anything was available. So Medi set up custom connectors and used the APIs in the background to kind of mock something up for the customer. Based on that, my colleague Denise then built admin connectors in PowerShell, and those are the Power Apps for Admins connector that you see today, that you can call from your apps and flows that you're building. And those were then launched publicly in August 2018. So you can see that some of this goes quite some time back. With the launch of those connectors, customers started adopting the connectors, and they worked with the Parquet team to share their scenarios. And the Parquet team started templatizing those scenarios, and that led to the release of the CoE Starter Kit, the very first version, at Embers 2019, so November 2019. And I think the reason I kind of want to talk about it, let me just play the animation there, is that everything that's done in the CoE kit, every part of it is inspired by customers that we've worked with. So in the very initial phase, the adoption was through our managed customer engagement. So, as a team, we engaged with customers. They told us what they wanted to do with the kit, and we implemented those components. Some customers were kind enough to share components with us, and send us their stuff, and we incorporated them in the kit to kind of speed up the development. And we then moved to last year have an open source backlog, so kind of managing everything very transparent out in the open to say this is what we're working on, these are kind of existing bugs, this is our feature backlog. And we prioritized increasingly not just the asks from our managed customers, but also from the community of customers. And I would say last year is really when we started to scale the adoption via evangelism and education, through our partners, through the community, so both inside and outside of Microsoft. And that led to a funded CoE Starter Kit team, and that's myself and my colleague Jennifer. We've in this year we launched CoE office hours, and I'll share more about those in a bit. We made the development more robust by having ALM and an automated release process in place, and more we're contributing to the product roadmap based on the feedback of the CoE kit. We're now at around 10,000 customers who use the kit, so the adoption has obviously grown massively, and we're really proud kind of the achievement that we've had in showing that there's value in the kit. And where we currently are is that the CoE Kit is highlighted in the product. So if you go to the Power Platform Admin Center and you look at the documentation pane on the homepage there, there's a link to the CoE Kit there. So we're kind of trusted by the product to be highlighted there. We inspire the product, so things like tenant level analytics that are now part of the product that you can opt in. If you look at those reports, we worked really closely with the analytics team to kind of show them how the CoE Kit reports look, so they could kind of take inspiration of that. And then managed environments, we've just mentioned, that's rolling out into public preview right now. And we've worked really closely with the team to influence what they productize as part of that. And that's obviously an ongoing journey. So it's launched into preview right now with kind of a limited set of capabilities, but there's more work going into that. And we're working really closely with the team so they know what we hear from customers and can kind of base. They have a much richer set of feedback to base their future investments on because of people like you who are using the kit. And yeah, so kind of really highlighting everything we do is based on customer feedback. We wouldn't develop something if we didn't hear from at least one customer that they needed. So if you do have an idea, you can raise a feature ask in our GitHub backlog. So we do everything kind of out in the open. And you can also browse our existing backlog in our GitHub repo. So you can kind of have a look at what we're planning on doing, when we're planning on doing it, and kind of add your own scenarios to it or upvote things, which helps us kind of prioritize asks. So yeah, really, what have we heard from customers and what is the CoE Kit doing about it? So quite a lot of the times the questions between customers were kind of similar, like how do I keep my tenant tidy? What do I do about this app and flow sprawl? How do I find my champions? What do I do if someone leaves the organization? And how do I manage this at scale if kind of everyone has the potential to be a maker? So some of those scenarios are addressed in the CoE Kit, and I'll demo some of the experiences in a bit. The way we position the CoE Kit is, and there's a reason we call it a starter kit, is so you've got kind of the existing offering in the admin center. And obviously the product team is investing. They are more and more. So tenant level analytics launched last year. Managed environments has just been announced. And that's kind of your first point of entry into the admin world. And then you've got extensibility via connectors and PowerShell, where you can build your own governance capabilities using those. The CoE Kit is really what we call a templatized implementation of best practices. So a collection of apps and flows that have helped one customer and that may help you. But there's definitely no one size fits all when it comes to governance and adopting the Power Platform. So some of the things in the kit you might want to use as they are. They perfectly fit your idea of adopting Power Platform and you use them as they are. Other parts, you might look at them and think, well, that's a good idea, but it doesn't really fit with how we work in our organization. So you use them as an inspiration, you use them as a template, and you create something kind of on top of that. And in many organizations, we found that the real power of the kit kind of starts to shine when you start to customize and extend it and really make it your own rather than just kind of using it out of the box and taking things as they are. The way the CoE Kit works is it builds a foundation of your Power Platform inventory, telemetry, and maker data in a Dataverse instance where the CoE Kit is installed. So we have kind of all of this knowledge of what's going on in your tenant. And then on top of that, we build Power BI dashboards, apps, flows, and processes that help you adopt, govern, and manage Power Platform adoption. So the building block of it is always that kind of blue foundation here. Today, that foundation is built using Cloud Flows, and they kind of use the admin connectors to crawl your tenant, look at everything that you've got. So look at all the environments, look at all the apps, and write data back to Dataverse. So everything in the kit depends on those Cloud Flows that build that foundation. For larger organizations, that doesn't scale very well. They hit kind of throttling limits with flows, and obviously Cloud Flows are maybe the best tool to use for that level of data transformation. So coming soon is we're replatforming the CoE Starter Kit to use a Power Platform Admin Center feature as a foundation that's called Data Export in the Power Platform Admin feature in our documentation is referred to as self-serve analytics. And that's a feature where your inventory and telemetry is pumped to a data lake in your Azure subscription, and we'll base our CoE kit on top of that. We've started developing this 2 weeks ago because we were waiting for some product capabilities to be available. We're estimating that preview of this will start in October, November. So the sooner you enable self-serve analytics, it's an opt-in feature. So the sooner you enable that, the sooner you start gathering data, and the more ready you will be when we have the CoE kit ready on that foundation. So yeah, how do you get started? So once you've installed the kit and gathered that foundation, the first place to start is with our Power BI dashboards. So we've got 2 dashboards. One is really to get familiar with what you already have in your tenant, and that's really kind of browsing the inventory. And then the second dashboard is really focused on giving you key actionable insights that you as an admin can look at and work off and prepare your to-do list. So I'll bring those up to do a demo of them. So the first dashboard, really think of it as kind of browsing what's going on in your tenant at the tenant level with the addition of Azure Active Directory information. So you can see who your top active departments are, and you might want to kind of reach out to them and see where they're finding value, turn them into success stories that inspire other makers. Equally, you can look at, for example, what connectors are being used, and you can filter it down to, let me just undo that. So you can filter it down to the default environment, and you can see if you're planning your DLP strategy, you can see these connectors are currently used in the default environment. Maybe mail you don't want to have used, so you can filter that. You can see it's Kenneth using the mail connector, so you can work with Kenneth to, switch that to the Office 365 Outlook connector and reduce the risk of that application breaking if you block the mail connector. And again, it's kind of like you might have a procurement department that reaches out to you and they're like, well, who's using those premium features? We want to cross-charge them. So there's this license assessment here where you can say, show me the connector here, and then filter down by department. And then you can see out of the 1,000 premium apps, the marketing department has 260 of those. You can kind of start planning your cross-charging strategy. This dashboard has quite a lot of pages, and the intent is really to kind of explore all of them, see what filters there are available, and deep dive into your existing adoption. And that can be really helpful, but sometimes not. It's like someone has a question and you're able to answer that looking at that dashboard, but it doesn't maybe provide you with those kind of detailed insights that you might want to come up with an action plan. And that's where the second dashboard comes into play. And here we've really tried to highlight things that you as an admin should definitely care about and need to take action on. So suspended flows is an example where these flows don't work anymore. And you might need to reach out to the maker to see, are they still needed? They might not have even noticed that those flows aren't running anymore because they're like background processes, and kind of get them back into compliance. Same with applications. If you right-click on one of the tiles here, you can drill through to the details of each of the items, and you can see these are the list of applications that today aren't compliant with your DLP policies, and that means those applications can no longer be launched. You can see what policies are being violated, and from here, email the maker to say, look, if you're still using this application, it's currently not working, what can we do to bring that back into compliance? Same story with flows using plain text passwords. That's maybe not the most secure way to use flows and connections. So you can kind of drill through there and reach out to all of those makers, especially Megan, and tell them that there's a better way to connect to these data sources. Please don't use plain text passwords because that poses a security risk to my organization. So this dashboard really used that to come up with an action plan and try to reduce those numbers on the tiles here. So yeah, from your existing adoption, and many of the customers that we work with do have existing adoption when they get started, plan your environment and DLP strategy. Identify what's currently highly used and highly shared and what might be business important, and migrate that to dedicated environments if it's currently in the default environment. Look at the connectors that are used in the default environment, and instead of just kind of plainly blocking them, see what the usage is or what the reason for the usage is, and again migrate that to dedicated environments and create a DLP strategy around that. You can learn a lot from your existing adoption, and I would always encourage you to not create your admin and governance strategy in a silo. What you create as your admin strategy has to work for the makers that are using the platform in your organization, and your existing adoption can kind of influence what you're doing there. You can also identify existing champions. So most likely you have makers that have already started creating apps and flows and that got a lot of value from it. So look at finding those people and reach out to them and see what you can learn from them. Was there something that worked for them? What would have helped them to succeed faster? What can you do to help them kind of succeed faster? And equally kind of identify enthusiasts. So people who started developing an app and flow, but then gave up, didn't finish it, and learn from them why they gave up and how can you help them kind of get business value from the platform. And then kind of with the last dashboard is, mitigate potential risks and data loss. So look at things that are using HTTP instead of HTTPS or plain text passwords, etc., and kind of help those makers understand how to better use the platform in a secure way. Part of the nurture components of the kit is then a pulse survey, so you can automate that reaching out to makers and asking them what they think. So using this process, it sends an adaptive card to a maker and asks them, how happy are you with our Power Platform adoption program? Were you even aware that it existed? And what else could that program have done for you? And the way it works, it kind of picks like random makers, and it doesn't survey the same maker twice within 6 months. So there's all of that kind of randomization is built in there, so you don't have to keep track of who you've asked and who you haven't asked. And then on the back of that, you get another dashboard that shows you all of the responses that you've received, and kind of you can see kind of who's responded positively, negatively, which makers have responded, and you can get further details there as well. So you can kind of see what people have answered, and build your nurture program or your community program based on the feedback that people have received. So someone might say that, a mentorship would have helped me, or more hands-on training would have helped me, or if someone says, I have a customer who did who did something like this, and like 80% of the people that they surveyed said, I wasn't aware that there was a Power Platform adoption program. Like, how do I find out more about it? So actually they learned that they didn't need to refine their program. They just needed to refine making people aware of the program. So things like that you can learn from doing surveys like that. Once you're kind of familiar with the existing adoption that you have, you're going to want to look at managing this more at scale. So you might want to store additional metadata against environments to check what's kind of approved for that environment to be used. As you're planning your DLP policies, you want to see the impact the change might have on existing apps and flows, and you might have a need to bulk update permissions for apps and flows that where the owner has left the department and is no longer looking after that, or you want to change the ownership to a service account so that it doesn't depend on that kind of single user. So there's applications in the CoE kit that help with that. So I'll go to the next demo. One part of the CoE kit is this admin command center, and from there you can launch all the apps that are part of the kit. So that's like kind of the easy entry point into everything. And the first step we'll look at is the DLP editor. In the interest of time, I've launched it in the background already. So here you can see all the DLP policies that you already have. You can look at one of the policies and change the connector configuration. And note here that the configuration is the change that you make here is only within that application. It doesn't actually change your DLP policy live. So here you would kind of look for a specific connector and maybe block one and move the other one to business. And then you can select the scope. And I'm going to add an additional environment to that policy so you can see, clean the filter. So you can see what policy that, what environments the policy would apply to. And then on the next screen, fingers crossed I selected a good impact. You can see the impact that DLP policy would have were you to save it. So at the moment, nothing is saved, nothing is impacted. And you can see, I've obviously just created a policy that blocks most of the CoE kit by putting these two connectors in opposing buckets. And I can now see, in that environment, this would be the impacted applications. And the reason for the impact is here. And I can reach out to Adele and say, look, we need to migrate your app to a different environment, or you're using a connector that we won't allow anymore in our tenant. Can we discuss your use case? Maybe we can find an alternative solution for you. So that works well if you have little impact. If you have kind of a large number of applications and flows that are impacted, kind of going through it like this might be challenging. So you can also export the impacted apps and flows to a CSV file and then create your own scripts that might do like a bulk email, for example, to all of the makers. If you're happy with causing an impact, you can then update the policy from here as well. So save it directly back. So you don't need to then go to the admin center and update the policy from there. But up until you click that button here, everything is just done in the context of this application and no real impact is caused. So that's probably one of the things you will do as you kind of get started. You have a lot of adoption in your default and developer environments, and you need to create DLP policies that support the security stance of your tenant, but you don't want to go in and break everything that's already been created. I would really kind of advise against that, because people have created things that they found valuable or added value to their department. So find out why they're using a specific connector and try and find a plan around it, like most likely kind of a dedicated environment. And then I guess kind of so you've looked at the adoption that you have at the moment. You've started creating environments and DLP policies that support your strategy, and you've done some basic cleanup, like for example, you got rid of applications that are orphaned and or abandoned and things like that. But really, the goal as an admin should be that you want to facilitate better communication between makers and admins, so to take off a lot of the manual burden of the kind of your admin work, so you can focus on things that matter, like introducing new capabilities or learning about what's coming next in the platform, and not kind of tediously creating environments for your makers, kind of one after the other after they email you. So there's the majority of the kit, I guess, is dedicated to these reactive governance processes that make life for the admin easier and automate some of the background capabilities. So actually, I've got a slide for each of those, so I'll talk you through them. The first one is really around app and flow sprawl. So, especially in the default environment, people are creating apps for training purposes. We've all got 100 Contoso device ordering apps in one environment or another, and they might not be needed anymore. And as an admin, you don't know, is it needed? What is it intended for? Is it supported? How many people are using it? And the main downside of that sprawl is that you're less agile in making decisions. So if you have a ton of apps in your environment, you're less agile in updating security roles and DLP policies. If half of those applications are no longer used, you might not know about it because they're still there. And without automation, you can kind of manually discover apps and flows that haven't been launched or modified and reach out to the makers, and conversations might be stored in emails, and that can lead to frustration on admin and maker side. And as an admin, it kind of takes up a lot of your time. So we've got this process called inactivity notifications. And that means that makers receive an approver task to say, look, we found this application or this flow. We don't think it's used anymore. We tell kind of the maker why we don't think it's used anymore. And they can approve the deletion of that app or flow if they no longer need it. Or they can say, no, you know what? I still need this. And they can ask for that app or flow to be excused from that process. And that is all done kind of automatically. And as an admin, you don't have to look for those things that are unused, and hopefully your makers respond to those tasks, and you can keep the tenant tidy by deleting things. Additional to the approver, which comes through via an email, there is an application that helps, that does kind of the same thing. It shows a maker everything that's highlighted for deletion, and they can approve or reject the deletion of that process. The second part is probably one of the most common things we hear from our customers when we talk to the admin persona is, what do I do if a maker leaves the organization and apps and flows are left behind? As an admin, you might not know who the next best person is to own that application, or if it can be deleted. So together with one of our customers, we've come up with a process where it's actually the previous manager of the person that created the application or flow that owns the decision. So they can decide who's the new owner, or they can take ownership themselves, or they can delete the app and flow. And that obviously reduces the burden on the admin. So ideally, as an admin, you don't even have visibility of people leaving the organization and things being reassigned. So yeah, the way it works is it sends the manager a Teams adaptive card with saying that, this marked person was your employee and they've left behind all of these apps and flows that are no longer needed. What you want to do with them, and the manager can take ownership of them all, or assign them to someone else on their team, or they can delete them all, or obviously they can make a decision on each of the items as well. So yeah, that's kind of reducing the burden on the admin to deal with what we call abandoned or orphaned resources. And then the kind of other part, so we've got, I guess the three common themes that we hear is, what do I do with things that are no longer needed? What do I do with things that are orphaned? And then what do I do with things that are business important and critical, and how do I identify them? So definitely kind of increased adoption of the platform leads to more apps and flows, and some of them may become business important, business critical, and makers might have started creating them in the default environment, in a trial environment, and didn't really know the guidance that was available to them. So we've got a process that reaches out to app makers. Put that on the next screen. Yeah. So if an application is shared broadly or used more broadly, the the maker will receive an email and say, look, your admin needs a little bit more details about your application. And then they're directed to the Developer Compliance Center app where they can provide further details like how critical is this to my business, who has access to it, what's the mitigation plan, and the admin can review those details and then work with the maker to make sure that that application is supported in the best way possible. So that might mean kind of educating the help desk or creating a user manual, or even kind of handing over the application to a support team that can take on like first and second level support and things like that. So it kind of builds a bigger picture around the applications that you have in your tenant. And as an admin, like automatically identifies what's highly used and highly shared, and helps you guide a maker to a better decision, I guess. And then the third part is, I think when maybe it's less relevant now, but when Dataverse for Teams environment launched, a lot of the customers we worked with were really worried about that sprawl of those new environments. I think now customers are a little bit more comfortable with those environments, but we kept the process in place in any case. So what this does, it asks the owner of that environment for a business justification to say, look, you've created this environment, what do you need it for? And the admin can approve or reject that business justification. And if it's rejected, hopefully they reach out to the owner as well. But if it's rejected, the environment will be deleted during the next weekly cleanup. And any environments that are created that don't have apps or flows in them within 90 days, so clearly they've been created, someone thought it was a good idea, but then didn't have a use case for apps and flows. So all of those are deleted automatically as well, kind of keeping your Teams environments to only those that are really needed. So the last 5 scenarios, I guess, are really meant to help with that reactive governance of dealing with the most common questions that we've heard from customers as they adopt the platform. And like the recommendation is to maybe not turn on all of them at once, because that might be kind of overwhelming for you as an admin to manage. Decide what's most important to you. Maybe you have a high number of abandoned applications. Maybe kind of switch on that process to get a better kind of grasp of that and reassign them. Or maybe you have a high number of things that are no longer used, and start kind of working through those and kind of do it one by one and really come up with a plan of what process makes sense for you, and which one doesn't. So with the CoE kit, it's definitely not mandatory to use every single part of it, but it's good to be aware of everything that's available, so you can kind of decide what makes sense for you and when it makes sense for you. Definitely, like on day one, some of these processes might not make sense because you might not have your environment and DLP strategy set up to kind of support what comes back from those processes. And then, so the kind of the last part of the presentation was around reactive governance. But you might also want to provide proactive governance to your makers. So before they get started creating something, you want to tell them what's available in the tenant and what the guidance is. So we've got a little bit less of that in the kit, but definitely there are some parts that might be interesting. So there's a template catalog that allows you to upload templates, and that can be anything from your brand logos to a PDF document with your kind of naming standards, to obviously like Canvas app templates and flow templates that you can share with your makers, and they can download it from there and base their applications on it. There's we call it the maker assessment application. We've worked with a customer on that. And their idea was basically that before a maker starts building their application, they fill out this assessment, and they get the best possible guidance there so they don't hit a wall later on in the process. So if they, for example, say that this application is mission critical, it's going to be used by 10,000 people in my organization, then the assessment outcome might be that you need to work with a support team that can officially support this application, because it shouldn't depend on just you to support that. So we provide a set of kind of sample questions there, but the goal is really to kind of make that fit your own questions that you want makers to ask. Probably the simplest and most used part of the CoE kit is the welcome email. And that means that when a maker creates something for the first time, an app, a flow, a custom connector, they receive a welcome email to say, hey, we see you've created something in our tenant. Here's the guidance that we want you to follow. As an admin, you can completely customize that email, so you can pop in your own community. If you've got a wiki, if you've got like learning paths, if you've got like Yammer or Teams channels for your makers, add all those links to the to that email, so that a maker kind of immediately knows where to go, and they, you're kind of immediately wrapping your hands around them and say, we've got you, we're here to support you, and this is what's available. Yeah, we've talked about I'm just going to rush through the last part. So we've got, I see there's a couple of questions. And that's kind of like, so you've got your reactive governance, or you start with getting an overview of what's going on. You then look at your reactive governance and then your proactive governance. And then last but not least, you're going to look at getting kind of everyone involved in the movement. So for that, we've got three elements today. One is an innovation backlog, where everyone, like if you share the application with everyone can submit an idea for what they would like to see built on the Power Platform, and they describe the business value around it. It calculates a return on investment, and someone, like either you have a Power Platform development team that could pick up the idea for development, or you've got like a buddy program, so someone could help the person that submitted the idea to develop this thing themselves. And that's kind of the idea around that. There's an app catalog, and the idea is really like an iOS store for Power Apps within your organization. So you can highlight what's already available in the organization. It's intended for the end user to either request access or launch the application, but they can also submit feedback and ratings. So you've got kind of a star rating there, and that might, again, be useful for the maker to know how people think about their application. And then there's a training management application that's used for like people signing up to training events. And the good part about that one is that someone might sign up to an internal app in a day event that you're hosting, but they sign up to it using a Power App, and they're receiving the invite using Power Automate. So they've already had their first interaction with the platform when they show up to that event to learn about the platform. So that's kind of how I think about it. And coming soon, so with the next release, part of that everyone bucket will be a video hub. So that will be for you to curate playlists and videos for your makers to train and learn about the Power Platform. And that can be internal videos that you host on Stream, for example, as well as external videos that are available on YouTube. So we're just finishing up this application. It's not live yet in the latest release, but hopefully in August we'll be able to launch that. And the idea, no, it's not under NDA. Everything we do is out in the open. And the idea is that you can kind of browse and filter what's available. And as an admin, you can create playlists. So you could create an onboarding playlist. Someone new, and in the welcome email, point the maker to that playlist. They can view that and then view all of the videos directly inline here, and get kind of all of their onboarding content ready. So there was a bit of a whirlwind tour of everything that's in the kit. Video Hub we've talked about. I think in the interest of time, I'll maybe go to questions and just leave the office hours slide up here.
Thanks, Manuela. Wow, that that was awesome. The video hub is going to be really, really useful for people.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. We've worked on it for a bit now.
You were talking about also like extending. One of the things that we're doing on the compliance detail request is playing with, instead of sending the email, actually sending an adaptive card to see if that changes our response rate on that. But I think that's important for people to understand that that ability to extend it is really so powerful.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think so Teams adaptive cards is something that we're looking at more and more. Some of the processes are definitely so old that the adaptive cards didn't exist when we created them, and that's why we went with approvers or just emails. So we're looking at, I think, all of the newer stuff we've definitely done adaptive cards with, and we see like a massive increase in, or customers have seen a massive increase in responses because Teams is where people spend their time on or
Hmm.
their time in. So yeah, looking forward, I think we do want to have like everything we do that's interactive would be at least initially facilitated in an using an adaptive card. I think that's definitely our plan.
That's great. I think Ralph was also asking earlier when we were talking about moving to the data lake there, about guidance on cost for that as well. And Ralph, feel free to come off mute, or anybody who wants to, please.
Sure. Let me clarify that, because right now, in fact, this could be like one of the stopping points. It's like it happened when someone didn't have their correct license. They try to run that first sync flow, and all of a sudden, oh, the license is not right. Oh, okay, we can't run this flow right now. Does this essentially mitigate that collection via that
Um,
flow, or is this something that's going to be something on the side? You still need that flow.
so at the moment, the only resources that are in the data lake are apps, so Canvas apps and model-driven apps, cloud flows, and environments.
Right.
So everything that's not yet in the data lake, we would still continue to have the sync flow. So that's desktop flows, chatbots, portals are the ones I can think of.
Okay.
So I guess if you don't care about that, then the sync flow will be gone. But if you do want to build that holistic view of what's going on in your tenant with all of the resources, you will still need the sync flows until everything is in the data lake. So there is
Right.
definitely the product group has a path to have all of the resources in the data lake, but at the moment it's just covering apps and
Okay.
cloud flows.
So let's clarify the timeline. The timeline is your sync flows are required in order to fill up your data. If you don't run the sync flows, you don't get any data. It's all or nothing. You can't run, I only want the app sync flow. No, it's you run the sync flows. I think, how many of them? There are like 4, or is there just one for
Um,
everything?
no, there's one sync flow for every resource. So like one sync
Right.
flow for apps, one sync flow for flows. And the way basically it will work is that, and we'll build a setup interface over that. But basically, it will at the beginning it will say, do you want to get data from the data lake or just from the sync flows? And then if you
Yes.
choose data lake, it won't switch on the apps and flows sync flow, and it will only switch on the sync
Right.
flow for
They're
desktop flows,
broken
etc.
out. That's right. That's right.
Yes,
Because
yeah,
they're
it's all
broken out.
broken out.
We
Yeah,
have the master flow, which calls all the little
yeah,
flows. You
yeah.
could potentially kill off if you play with it yourself. You could do that for now. But in the meantime, remember, you're talking about scale. The reason why you went to the data lake was because we want to solve the problem for gigantic corporations where that 10 hour is going to be 100 hours to collect the data. With the data lake, of course, that solves that. But what you're saying is, and it's a timeline, it's only going to be for certain apps. So that means that when that happens, at some point the COE will have the option to say, okay, I'm now getting this data from the data lake, and everything else I'm still going to use the regular flow.
Yeah, and
That's what it sounds like.
it won't be mandatory to use the data lake. So obviously onboarding
Yes.
onto the data lake requires you to have an Azure subscription. It requires you to know how to
Ash,
get an Azure subscription in your organization. So we'll always say, like, we'll always support the existing sync flows, or not always might be the wrong word to use. For the time being, we'll continue to support the sync flows, and it will be an optional decision to say, I want to get my apps and flows from the data lake because I've already, done that process.
yes.
But we do have
So
customers who have like so I'm working with a customer right now, and they've got 100,000 flows in their default environment. The current sync flows don't work for them, like full stop. There's no thresholds, no license that you can apply to that flow for it to work. It's just too much inventory to gather. So for those customers, they will have to use the data lake.
Exactly. So the thing is like now that you're doing that, the idea is now the guidance in the calculator is what it is, because we can figure out, unlike the licensing for Power Platform, Azure is straightforward. You go to the Azure calculator and figure it out. But if someone asks you, well, how much data will that be? That's what the guidance we're going to look for. So that's my only recommendation is as you put together those samples, don't leave out the customer's name, but say when we saw 100,000 flows, we saw it use this much data capacity. So plan to calculate in that, with that in mind.
I think that's valid,
the idea.
Ralph. Yeah, because those are the questions as admins we get a lot of the time. What is the capacity cost of this? Absolutely, yeah.
Right, and mostly we don't know because we've never collected the data. If someone says, "Well, how much data is it getting when it runs this the first time?" Actually, we have no idea. We've never. It's like every client sometimes is totally different of what it collects the first overnight of the 10 hours, and I'm pretty sure if it's so big that it needs a data lake. Yeah, probably have a good idea to get guidance on just where to look, and then maybe we'll come up with a blog that says, here's the Azure calculator, enjoy.
Yeah, no, we've worked on that already, but so for the customer that has that many flows and apps, it's pennies. So it's a couple of megabytes of data, and per month it's
awesome.
You heard it here, folks.
The cost is not very very large.
Promises. I heard pennies. I'm scheduling my vacation now.
So we've got another question here, I think, and I'm probably going to just destroy your name. I'm sorry. It's Kapchari, I think. And please feel free to come off mute. And the question was about activating and having the email communications go out initially. Is that maybe the setting for the do you set the production environment value to no for that when they're initializing?
Yes. Yeah, great. So if you install the kit in a development environment, or you just want to not for emails to not go out to makers, there's an environment variable called production environment. If you set that to yes, the emails will go to whoever they are intended to. If you set it to no, the emails will go to the admin persona. So you can kind of preview what the email will look like. One thing to note is if your flows are on and you change the environment variable, you need to turn the flows off and back on because they cache the latest value. So it's not really anything to do with the CoE kit, but it's a product limitation. So if you change the environment variable value whilst the flow is on, you need to turn it off and back on again to retrieve the latest value. And I will.
And I noticed this month in the command center update too, it has the ability to reset the flows right there after you save. That's really cool.
We try.
And it looked like it resets the flows based on the variable that you're changing. Is that correct, or am I just?
Oh no, I clicked on the wrong thing, and it's gonna take forever to load. Yeah. So we've started in the background to collect. We call it metadata of the CoE kit. So we kind of collect which environment variable is used in which flows. We can query that from the solution table internally. And then if in the command center, if you change some of the flows, it will then ask you to, it will prompt you to reset the flows that are used, the flows that use that environment variable. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm not sure if there. This one is a good example. So you then reset the flows, and it should bring up a pop-up window with the flows that this variable use. So yeah, you can see this flow uses that environment variable that we've just talked about, and then from here you can turn the flow off and back on again.
And Joe's asking too, and I think it's a good question based on we were talking about earlier. If you're updating the kit monthly, like you are, should we focus on not extending the kit ourselves and submit requests to your group instead?
So we've recently published an article on extending the kit. I'll pop that into the chat window as well. Yeah, it's a good question. So we've kind of summarized here what you should extend and what you shouldn't extend. So tables and model-driven app support merging, so you should be able to extend them without issue. Canvas apps and Cloud Flows do not support merging. So basically what you'll do is you take a copy of it and you then choose to no longer receive our upgrades. And that's, you might want to do that if there's a process that's very specific to your organization. Or if you think that what you're doing is applicable to a more broader audience, please raise a feature ask, and then we'll consider it for a future release. But very often, or sometimes you may find that it's something very specific to your organization. Like we've seen kind of integrations with ServiceNow systems, which we will never do as part of the kit. And then the cloud flows that are responsible for gathering inventory, so we call them the sync flows, don't customize them. Like we frequently make updates to them to improve the performance where we can, gather additional data, etc. So if you have additional requirements there, definitely raise a feature ask or create a separate flow for that. But kind of that's the only thing that we recommend to not modify.
Well, Manuela, this is awesome. I know I think the questions could keep going, and I know we're coming up on time. We're 1 minute. And I think a lot of these questions too are things that seem like could go very easily over to the office hours.
Yep, please join me tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that might be kind of good to finish off. So we host, so myself and Jennifer, who I mentioned at the beginning, we host monthly office hours. They are the second Wednesday of each month. And the majority of the time is like an Ask Me Anything style forum where people quick fire questions at us, and we try to answer them as best as we can. And then also we kind of walk through what's new in the kit with a monthly release. So it's a good way to kind of stay up to date with what we've released. And sometimes we use polls in those office hours to influence future investments. So if you want to have a voice in kind of what we're doing in the future, attending those is a good idea. And this is how you can sign up to them.
It's one of my favorite hours of the month. I'm not going to lie. So
thank you.
I think a lot of us appreciate it. And we so appreciate your time today, Manuel, and coming and talking to us and helping us to understand this. We're going to be off next month, and then we'll be back in September. And we're going to keep on this roll of just awesomeness right now. And we're going to talk about application lifecycle management. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to put in here, if you want to click the form and give me your email information, I'll make sure that you get added to the teams. We'll have all of this information in there. Eva was asking Manuela if the presentation will be available for people to grab.
Yeah, I can share that with you, and you can then make that available in the community, right?
Yep, great. So
Yep,
I will put
perfect.
it inside of there. So if you just go ahead and join, and like I said, and let's keep the conversation going in there, because this is a great opportunity. But also, don't forget about the office hours tomorrow, because it just pays dividends. So so with that, thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate it.